Here's a hard truth. You're probably wasting time in games you can't win.
Welcome to In Response, a Legacy podcast.
Whether you're a dedicated player or just curious about Legacy, join us
as we discuss why conceding early is often the smartest play.
You are listening to In Response, a Legacy podcast. A show where three handsome guys talk about their favorite Magic the Gathering format, Legacy.
I'm Peter Plank, the Artificer. I've got everything at hand in my Goblin Welders toolbox.
I'm Daniel, the Scientist. I ponder precisely about the next move that decides the fate of my opponents.
I'm Philip Klein, the Rogue. I use the graveyard to fuel opponents with agony.
And now, lean back and enjoy.
So Daniel, I mean, this topic is a little bit controversial that we're talking today. So is it really beneficial to concede, to lose games? I mean, it's totally counterintuitive, in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah. Normally let's say when you start your first couple of matches, when you start your first couple of tournaments, usually you would think, okay, I need to drag this game as long as possible because there might be a chance I still win. And then, well, a win is a win, of course. Yeah, it's oftentimes the wins that are people want to achieve and people want to really emphasize. But what we want to talk about a little bit today is, sometimes it's not the case, of course. And I had this couple of situations in the past where I did not get to play my full 3 games because of time, for example.
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Yeah, and solely because of the reason why winning is tied to a prize, because you, especially in paper Magic, you share your 50 minutes that you have in a typical game, and I often ended up drawing because I didn't concede too early enough. When there's some of the different concepts that are applied to this kind of theory, let's say.
Okay, so tell me a concept. I can't fathom right now why conceding would be the best thing. I mean, you can always draw something from the top.
True.
Am I wrong here?
Yeah. Usually, yes. However, what I would say is it depends on the game state, on the current position you are when you are facing a different, a board state, for example. When you're playing against control, your control player opponent has 7 cards in hand, has a planeswalker on the battlefield, a couple of untapped lands, and you're top decking, and you maybe, if you draw 2 or 3 cards in a turn, the perfect combination, you might be able to win. It's unlikely. So, I don't know, below 10%, 5%, whatever. And this is basically a situation that people should be able to evaluate on and then consider the remaining time they have for the game. That's one reason, for example.
Oh, for sure. So maximizing or to give yourself a chance to play the third game, actually. I mean, that's something all control players can sign, basically. Because these are the ones who go to time the most.
Yeah, because they don't have a fast clock, naturally.
Yeah, they fall into the draw bracket. And for me as a combo player, I mean, I often hope that I draw the first round to really slide into the draw bracket and simply can crush all the control players.
Interesting. This could be actually a strategic decision then from yours, and because you're playing a combo deck and you like to play against control decks.
Yeah, because these decks are the combo decks in itself are not naturally drawn to draw, because the games are simply too fast. So, but I think these heuristics that we're talking today also apply to a certain degree to combo decks, because it also gives you valuable information or hides valuable information from your opponent, what you are playing or what you're exactly, which list you're exactly playing. So I'm pretty sure we can talk about the key aspects of why people aren't conceding enough or don't lose enough, basically. So today we have the premise people should lose more often.
Which is like a little bit of let's say controversial.
Oh, for sure. So at first I think we can talk about that conceding more often will net you more games in total. So I think if you concede earlier or if you concede faster, then you get more games, more repetitions with your deck. You see more hands, have more mulligan decisions, and you are more informed in this particular matchup.
True. And you also have, on average, let's say, if you consistently get to play your games 2 and 3, if we assume we have a 3-game match, you have more sideboarded games as well, in addition. So you know probably a little bit better how to sideboard against a given matchup, and you can adjust the sideboarding along the way. If you see, okay, maybe 1 or 2 cards don't work out that very well in because you just lost, for example, game 2, heading into game 3. You can adjust also, but not if you don't have the time anymore. So, but of course, it's not meant that you should concede all the time, probably.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you concede all the time, then it's just losing.
Yeah, it's really evaluating what the right time for conceding is, and I get that, and this is something I have been discussing with when we discuss with community members, with different players. It sometimes is difficult to see, okay, which state is on average a losing position, and which is a position that I likely won't be able to come back or like crawl back into the game, because a losing position can happen after turn 1. I mean, if you're playing against Delver and your opponent plays turn 1, Delver go, you're already a little bit behind.
Yeah, that's tempo.
Yes, but you shouldn't concede, obviously, on the spot. It doesn't make sense. But if it is turn 10, your opponent has 2 Delvers, flipped Delvers on the battlefield, and you, you missed the land drop 1 turn or 2 turns, and you need to find some removal spells, but you likely need to cast a couple of cantrips, for example, but you likely know your opponent has find a daze or a force.
Yeah.
And, these kind of situations should indicate to yourself, okay, let's move on to the next game, start with a fresh game, reset the mind, and then have more time.
Yeah, for sure. Also, in my opinion, a good rule of thumb is how many cards or how many successes do I have in my deck that are still can turn the tide around.
True.
So if I'm playing, let me guess, 3 Abrupt Decay or something in your deck, you already used 1, and you have 2 Abrupt Decay left, and you need to remove a Teferi Time Reveler or something to win through this. The probability of drawing one of those 2 Abrupt Decays is extremely low.
Yeah.
So maybe this should indicate that it's time to scoop it up, to pack it up. It's different if there are a lot more successes. If, for example, in Upsal spells, all you need is a spy effect, is an Underset Informer or a Balustrade Spy, and you haven't seen any of them, or have seen maybe 1 and it got countered, and afterwards you're looking at 7 successes. If you include, if you have the mana, if you include a hardcast Dread Return, you're up to 8 successes. If you include Reanimate, you're up to 9 successes. that's a total different beast. You can work with these many probabilities.
Absolutely, yeah. Like 9 different copies, or let's say things for that does the same thing for you in the given situation is a whole different story that compared to you looking for one-off in the deck, for example, to get into a position where you can beat certain draws, certain elements that your opponent had or has on the table. And it is, of course, different for each kind of deck. It's not the same for a control deck and not the same for a combo deck, because naturally, what you also should keep in mind is, of course, if I have a certain number of draws I still have before I lose, let's say if I'm facing a clock of...
Like an Uro?
For example, 3-4 turns, for example, and then I'm dead. Is this 3-4 draw steps that I have enough that I can sculpt the winning game plan? Is my deck proactive enough? Or like, do I have a combo, like you mentioned with Upsol spells? Or do I really need to stabilize the board, find a threat, and attack multiple turns myself? How likely is it? Different story, of course.
And then you have always, how do I say this? I have to think through, is it worth it?
Yeah.
Is it worth it? It takes now 10 minutes of the game time to find these interactions, to build the board up, to maybe turn the tide around. And then even then it's not a secured win if you draw everything right. So oftentimes it's just better to save these 10 minutes going to game 3.
True. And this is one premise that is kind of behind all that is we consider drawing
losing.
Actually, yes. Because some people still think, okay, but at least I get 1 point. But for a tournament that you want to top 8, it is really close to losing, basically. Maybe slightly better, but it's negligible at this point. So you really want to either give your best chance for you to win the next 2 games, if it's, for example, game 1, or then having like a draw in the first or second round, and then like you said, you're in the draw bracket, and you have
facing other control decks,
or you just have a harder time because your breaker is bad, you have worse opponents, and so on. So,
I mean, you can you already lived that basically with when you played Cephalid Breakfast in at 4 Seasons, where you had a draw in the first or second round.
Yes, this was one occasion where I actually did that, and this actually costed me for sure, because I ended like 7-1-1 in total, and I got like 10th place or so.
Yeah, you went 10th. Yeah,
and I drew the first round. And I'm pretty sure if the draw had happened in the last round, it would be, of course, it would, for example, I don't know, I wouldn't do it, but if it was, for example, for an intentional draw, a chance for top 8, maybe it would have been possible. X1-1 is sometimes...
I'm pretty sure it would have been enough.
Yeah.
For top 8 then.
Exactly. Unless you are unlucky and there are so many players and you still got 9th place or so. But yeah, drawing early is not very good, or like drawing really in the first
2 to 3 rounds of the tournament is pretty much the same as losing. That's basically set in stone here. So we have to shout out our Patreons. It's Matt Duncan, Christian Neutz, Moritz Eichmer, and Andreas Leopoldseder. Thank you very much for supporting the cast. You make this possible. It's great to have you here. And subscribe to our channel. Subscribe on Spotify and on YouTube. Subscribe to our channels and simply be a part of In Response, a legacy podcast. Also, what's also pretty great is about conceding early is that every of these tips revolves around maximizing time or getting the most out of your 15 minutes that you have. Yeah. And the next thing is sideboarding. The more time you have between games, the better you can think about situations in sideboarding. So and sometimes it's just better that you don't have to make hasty decisions with sideboarding. you really can think about the matchup, and you can really think lines through. So giving yourself the opportunity to make a good sideboard plan on the fly is also a pretty good indicator to just speed things up here.
And maybe one thing that I try to do now a little bit more, and that could help for this is if you have more time for sideboarding, presumably because you saved a lot of like 10 minutes from the first game, you can really spend your time on how to sideboard not only against your opposing deck, but also against how your opponent is playing the matchup, for example.
And also how your opponent is sideboarding.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if a player picks up a certain deck and plays in a different way, a different player might do a little bit different. You know, different players might have some different preferences when it comes to sideboarding. And if you have more time, you can adjust to that potentially. So I'm pretty sure you can squeeze a couple of win percentages out of that if you, say stop, now I think about it. My sideboard plan that I studied says remove these cards, bring these cards in, but does it make sense when I'm playing against this specific opponent that has shown me to, I don't know, play in this certain direction? You can adjust that. But of course you need probably a little bit time on the fly because you cannot practice that because you don't know your opponent likely.
Yeah, we have seen this actually with the European Legacy Masters, the matchup. I don't know right now the opponent's name of Matteo Blasi in the finals because they were both from Blue Black Reanimator, and but they had totally different opinions and totally different ways to play the deck, so their sideboards were differently built.
Yeah,
and if you take that also in consideration, what your opponent might end up doing, or if your opponent is choosing to be control or the beatdown, so you can also make better informed guesses.
Absolutely, yeah. This is something that comes up if you have more time to prepare for this kind of thing. But that comes back to the point. Yeah, if you drag the game for half an hour, the first one, for example, I don't see a big chance that you will win the match because you need win two more games and you only have 20 minutes time.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. But on the counterpoint, there's the clock goes both ways basically. So if you're up a game, maybe you can if you don't scoop, then you can maybe squeeze out a win from your opponent because they get nervous because of time issues or something. So that always keep in mind with conceding that there are two sides of a match.
Also, I think I think people have to develop like a kind of a feeling, more or less a rule of thumb. When I see a different situation, I look at the situation and I say, okay, now this is losing. I should concede. But the pitfall of this is, of course, also that people tend to do that all the time, or like overdo it kind of thing. I also see people where there's like, because sometimes you miss some lines that you actually have access to, for example. I could play around this by, really playing tightly and having one or two turns, and where you really manage your resources very well. You play around certain things and you maximize your chances, that you have a way out of it, even without top decking. Then I think you should also go for it, but not just say, okay, it doesn't feel right, I feel pressured. Yeah, I usually always would lose this situation, let's scoop and go to the next one. This is kind of the counterpoint a little bit also. And then you might just lose without any good reason.
Yeah, because there are sometimes games where you can win out from the back.
Yeah.
Yes. Even if there's like we said, the chances are incredibly low.
Yeah.
but sometimes you just top deck the right thing. You can make a game-winning play, and scooping too early or too often, basically that's the thing here. Scooping too often can rob you of these situations, of these learning points, where you can navigate through a bad situation.
Sure.
And then maybe learn how I use my resources up to that point where I can draw that card. But it's always to keep in mind, conceding should always be on your options list.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, conceding is always something that you should consider regardless of situation.
So the players with the salt mine playmat are right. So
Yeah.
I think that's they put the salt shaker on it, and then the rule for conceding out of the rule book, and it's like a player may concede the game at any time.
It is possible. Yeah, doesn't use the stack. You can do it. True.
So also for conceding, there are some kind of mental benefits or mental issues that I think we can talk about here. Conceding very early, conceding earlier than normal, or more often than normal, can really save up some brain space, and can save you also a lot of mental fatigue, basically. So in my opinion, conceding early is also pretty good if you're playing in a longer tournament.
Absolutely.
So saving the game, saving the headspace for important decisions, and not dragging out the game too long is also a really great play here.
Yeah, it must be really devastating if you really squeeze out every minute. You don't have time between rounds to go to the bathroom.
That's the next thing.
All this kind of regaining, relaxing a little bit, stress relief. You need to consider these facts, especially when you play slower decks like control decks. And you really, if you drag it out too long, it would be a nightmare for me if I had to do this for 10, 11 rounds. That's usually the case. And thinking, for example, of this 4 seasons tournament series that we have.
I think maybe more like Eternal Weekend, with 11 rounds.
I mean, this is really extreme. And I think 4 seasons is maybe okay. It's usually 6, 7.
Usually about 8 to 9 rounds.
Yeah. But I think this is, even at that point, if you play for 9, 10 hours in a row, it's also devastating. So absolutely, you can really do it. And I think experienced control players, if you look at them, they draw. Yes, it happens, but I think you can really know how experienced the control player is by looking at that draw rate through a tournament. If it's, and if you really see it's actually on the lower side of things, maybe we can see a little bit of swingy, like sometimes they lose matches, but if they see the dedicated times, I don't know, control player ending up in 5-0-5 or something, draw 5 rounds and win 5, and then it's not really a winning position.
Probably a pretty inexperienced control player then, because it, like I said, it has the same effect on the standings. It's, I think if you go 5-0-5, it's like 15 to 20 points.
Yep.
And out of 10 rounds, that's not even enough to grab prizes, basically. So it would have been the same if you go 5-5.
Exactly. More or less, yeah.
Then?
Overall, what I would say is for the tournaments being played, what I try to focus myself is then this kind of feeling. I don't know, maybe it's just a skill that you have to develop when you play Magic for longer. I mean, when you're used to playing kitchen table, of course, usually just enjoy the games and you want to just have them. I mean, if you're for that, it's completely fine. But for competitive reasons,
or for testing,
probably also true. You really wanna always keep the time in mind. And I mean, there are so many things you can optimize, not only scooping that saves you time, but this is maybe a different story. But yeah, I think having the mindset that you share the clock is really important for paper legacy, paper Magic, which is not the case, for example, for Magic Online, which is separate clocks.
Yeah, so this episode, that's all about paper Magic. Because Magic Online is a totally different beast. There is the chess clock that works just for you, and the chess clock for your opponent. Yeah. So everything that we talk about today is just for paper Magic.
Yeah, if your opponent doesn't concede or you don't concede, it only hurts yourself or themselves. It's not like maybe this is something that you also can discuss a little bit. Since you're sharing the clock, you kind of always create a little bit of tension if some people play, and I mean there's a little bit of a debate maybe that's going on. One big example would be that is prominent at the moment, which is this Nadu gameplays that are happening. At which point should you concede? Because sometimes you end up in a situation, your opponent draws 2-4 cards per turn, but it's not representing like a one punch combo that wins immediately, or let's say a threat that is lethal on the next turn. It would take a couple of turns. So it's not really deterministic, but it's on average or like on probability based. But some people are more on the side of things, okay, I'll let my opponent kill me, and how long it takes, that's the time it takes. Or the other side of things, okay, I have presented this combo, it is so likely that I will win, you should just scoop. It's kind of the two side of things. And there's an argument for Nado that is creating unpleasant gameplay because of that reason. Because there are so many players who still want to continue, because obviously I'm not like literally dead right now. But it takes time, and I don't feel it's not great that you play against this kind of situation.
I think these situations are totally dependent on which deck you are on
yourself. So when you game against Nado,
So if I'm on a because against Nado you see all the cards that they are drawing. So Nado is known for whiffing. It's not always I have numbers and core and Nado wins wisdom on the battlefield and now I win. That's certainly not the case. Sure, they are drawing a lot of resources, they're drawing a lot of cards, but you always have them. You always know them. They are public information. So when I'm playing a combo deck, I can decide with the information that I've got from my opponent. If they flipped the Force of Will days or something, then it's pretty unlikely and that maybe I should scoop. But I'm always aware of that. If they assemble the combo, I have maybe 1 or 2 draw steps. That's at most. If I can't squeeze a game out of 2 draw steps, and that's with a combo deck, then I should probably scoop it up. If I'm a control player and they go to combo, then it depends on you have a sweeper like a Supreme Verdict or something. Can you find that in 1 or 2 draw steps? If you don't find it, scoop it up, save your time. And basically the same with Delver also. If you don't have the removal right now for the Nadu, it just bursts you in card advantage, and it's pretty much game over. So with Delver, I think it's even more or it's even better to scoop faster than with combo or control decks against Nadu.
I think there might be only one really reason if you're playing a Delver deck to not scoop when you're playing against Nado.
Price of progress.
Price of progress, yes, is also good counter, but I was just thinking of if your opponent is at 3 life and I can top take a card. But it's the same argument basically. If I have one card potentially,
Like combo, yeah.
yes, that wins on the spot, then it might be a good reason to go for 1 or 2 turns, because it doesn't cost too much time to find out is it happening or not. And
if another opponent goes on for 5 to 6 turns, drawing 35 cards,
then of course
the chances that they have 3 force of wills in their hand are insane, and they're all hard castable probably. So also what scooping does is it leads to less frustration in the long run, because if you scoop the match, or if you learn to scoop more often, then you learn to think about the games in an isolated way. So every game is what it is. It's one game, and you don't see the match as a whole. And it leads to less result-oriented thinking, because oftentimes we think, this card has won me the game the last time, this card has won me the game last time, or if I do this and that, then I can win. And you always you are biased in your experiences, and if you learn to evaluate every match on its or every game on its own, then it leads to a less result-oriented thinking, and that leads to less frustration in the long run, which is also a pretty great skill to have in a 10 rounds tournament.
Absolutely, I agree. I fully agree. This is probably one of the biggest points for this whole episode here, is that it is something that people need to be aware of, and I see people argument too much on single events that are happening in games.
Too often.
that is often claimed as being the reason why the game has the outcome it had, which is not really. I mean, it can be, but you need to see the bigger picture, as you mentioned. If I have a situation like situation X, but I do a certain play that I don't know, or I face a different situation and I decide to scoop or not scoop, whatever. And if I have the same situation 100 times, 1,000 times, how often does it end up in winning, losing? I need to a little bit think of that. Of course, I cannot calculate it, but this is something that, I don't know, probably is a little bit based on intuition, on of course, experience, some rule of thumbs. All that combined should give you to a little bit of a feeling, okay, how does this situation behave in 1,000 games? Likely. Is it good for me? Is it bad for me? And not thinking, oh, my opponent drew this one card, do this surgical my card, and I had it in my hand. Okay, or my opponent drew 3 wastelands, and therefore it's a bad matchup. I mean, of course, those games happen, and they happen quite frequently, but it's not based on statistics, of course. On average, you wouldn't face 3 wastelands a game. You would face 1, maximum 2.
But it feels like that.
It feels like it because those are so prominent.
I know this. I know that all the time, because it felt, I think, not the last time, but the time before. At our FNM, I faced, I think, 3 or 2 or 4 wasteland decks, and I've got hit with 13 wastelands that evening.
13, out of 4 decks.
Out of 4 decks.
Yeah.
It happens. Yeah. It happens, but it's like the probability is so low. It's so low.
Yeah. Also, that you face 4 wasteland decks in a row is also one of the things that you should consider. I mean, wasteland, of course, is pretty prominent in the meta game. You should not disregard it. And I think this can be also a learning factor. If you race it every round, it could influence your mulligan decisions. Also against an unknown opponent. Okay, do I lose against Wasteland? how much wisdom is in the metagame, I should mulligame, for example. But this derails probably in a different direction. But
Yeah, that will be for a different for a mulligan episode. I think that's a good one. We should also do that. But also, don't go into the habit of scooping too much. So that's walking on blade's edge here. It's a really fine line that scooping or generally conceding is about, because if you scoop too much, then it's like it becomes a habit. It's not good on your confidence. Because you lose a lot, and then it feels like I can scoop it, and these situations often lead to tilt-induced conceding, and that's also something people should be really aware of, because you're throwing away totally winnable matches.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it can be the case, and when you're tilted in game one, it probably affects your sideboarding, your decision making. You do not have a neutral state of mind that enables you to make really educated guesses in your next game, and it could really affect the outcome of the next game as well. Sometimes you miss little details that you because of your frustration you overlook. It happens, and then you might up losing 0-2 against a matchup that you could easily won in the sideboarded games if you focused. Either, well, maybe in the extreme case even win game one, but not let an early scoop, because I see, because this is maybe connected to that, if you are too much into this habit already, I see sometimes people really almost fall apart when they are facing a slightly losing position. When they feel pressured. So, oh my god, it does not go according to my deck's plan, and it doesn't go well for me. And then they start to frustrate, and then they scoop, and then it's over already. I think it's actually quite sometimes. Yeah,
that happens. I think maybe everyone has experienced that at some point in their quote unquote magic career. I'm totally guilty also of that, because I had my fair share of phases basically where I wasn't that lucky or made wrong decisions a lot of the time, and then you fall into like
vicious circle.
Yeah, and so to a vicious circle, and it's pretty hard to get out of that. And it's great if you can, like I said beforehand, if you can look at every game in isolation, then these things can often be left out. So you don't see them actually as or you don't fall into this circle kind of thing.
No.
So I'm pretty sure we can say as a conclusion, people don't scoop enough.
Yeah.
Some people scoop too much.
Yes, exactly. And you need to find the right balance.
Yeah, so if you're probably more on the side of playing hard, playing to win all the time, you should certainly try to scoop more often, really take your time. So if we can simply give you one thing on the way here, scoop it up, basically.
Yeah, scoop it up.
More often, definitely.
Sure.
If you're on the other side, if you're induced to salt, or if you have a little, I don't want to say salt machine, but it happens to all of us. It happened to myself as well. Like I said before, also a salt machine sometimes. Nobody is excluded from that, so it can happen to everybody. But these people should try to re-elevate their game plan and try to look at every match in isolation.
Yeah, it's a hard skill to learn, but you can get there, pretty sure. So
I hope you enjoyed our little talk here. Maybe you can take something home from today.
That's great.
In response.
Yeah.
This was In Response, a Legacy podcast. If you enjoyed the ride, feel free to support the show by following, leaving a review, or subscribe on patreon.com/response_legacy.